Hi there, it's a joy-filled June. We've been talking about how we fill our lives with joy, and then last week we talked about pain versus pleasure. So this week I want to have a slightly different conversation with you, and I want to encourage you to give this some thought. So this is Thoughtful Thursday, so that seems right, right? We should give some thought. And my name is Sandy Warren. If you've been watching me regularly, I thank you and I appreciate any comments, suggestions that you would like to give. The coaching business that I have is Wellness with Attitude, and my coaching style is about change and transformation. I call it navigating the curves of life. We all have curves, there are hills, and sometimes life comes at us fast. And there are curves, as I said. Sometimes we get caught in the curve, we miss the curve, we wind up in the ditch. So we want to think about what can we do. The first week in June, we talked about joy, finding joy in all sorts of different places, filling ourselves with joy, and why not for us, and why not now? So hopefully that brought you to a place of thinking, yes, I want to step into more joy. I want to make those choices. But you probably had some time when you bumped into some pain, and pain from an emotional standpoint. So maybe it was pain of disappointment. Maybe some of your expectations weren't met. Perhaps you were found yourself consoling yourself, perhaps, or making up a kind of an excuse for someone else that it was okay that they disappointed you, and you can be patient, and your goal is really to make people happy, so you're not going to call them on the disappointment that you felt. And so I want to talk to you about the things that we do to negotiate with ourselves. Sometimes it's old stories. Your old story might be, this always happens to me. I know better than to make a plan, because then when the plan doesn't come together, I am disappointed, so I just shouldn't make a plan. And so that would be an old story. There are other old stories that I'm sure you could design in your mind's eye well, I shouldn't say design, that you can go back and evaluate. You know what your stories are. So I want to encourage you to sit for a moment after this video is done, or shut this video off and do it now, and write down what are some old stories that get in your way of joy. Perhaps you feel like you don't deserve a lot of joy. Perhaps you've been kind of gotten an old story from old parenting that just be happy with what you've got. Just settle. Don't be greedy. So look at some of the old stories that maybe are jumping around in your head and may not be bringing you jubilant joy. The other thing is we sometimes have poor habits, and we have a habit of negative talk. Well, that's just the way it is. Just the way it is. Get on with it, move on, drop it. You didn't really need that anyway. And so one of the comments that I personally dislike is, it's just the way it is. Just the way it is. Just the way the pickle squirts. Just the way the pickle squirts. And so those aren't really messages that we give ourselves that do us any good. They don't bring us out of the old story. They don't pull us away to changing our body's physiology, which we talked about last week, to pumping up our vibrations so that we feel better. Wallow comes to mind, just kind of wallowing in that downtrodden feeling. And you've walked around in life and you've seen people that look downtrodden. Their shoulders are bent, their mouth droops down. And so do you want to be that person, or do you want to have more joy in your life? We sometimes need to take some evaluation time, and we need to look at those old stories and the bad habits. You are deserving. Are you somebody who's walking around in that imposter syndrome? You're not an imposter. You are authentic. You are a gift. You are designed as only you're designed. So, taking what you really have within you and building that into a celebration, stepping out of the old habits, stepping out of the old stories, can really bring you into a place of having more joy. When you have more joy in you, is it not true that you give more joy out to others? Don't you have a more loving heart? And isn't that really who you want to be? And I'm not saying that, you always have to be pie in the sky. But most things we can look at and say, this is a day that was given to me. This is a day that I can do something positive. This is a day that I can make change for myself, maybe for others. So I hope that on this Thoughtful Thursday, you can take a look, take a few minutes and reflect. And the best way to reflect, really honestly and truly, is to write it down. So look at maybe old messages you're giving to yourself that have been delivered to you. Where did they come from? Look at your old story. If this always happens to me, I don't know why I would expect anything different this time. Look at your poor habits of repetition, your poor habits of not changing your physiology, your poor habits of whatever the negative voices in your head are. I'm not good enough. People don't really care. I shouldn't have high expectations. Let me just sit in the back seat. You know, you don't have to be that person. And I hope that these Thoughtful Thursdays are drawing you to a space of maybe a little bit of self investigation, a little bit of evaluation, a little bit of let me see what I can change, can I adjust, what can I tweak. And as a coach, Coach Sandy, that's what I do. I help people to make some evaluations, to tweak some of the things that are holding them back, the old habits or the old stories. I would be honored if you would reach out to me and say, I'd like to discuss this. I'd like to get into a group, or I would like to know more, or I would like to have some resources. And I would love to be the one to reach out and help you with in any way that I can. And I'm going to close this up with just a thought that I hope that you will be joy filled, evaluate where you are, make some changes, and I'll pull it all together next week. So drop back in. Sandy, Coach Sandy, Wellness with Attitude, signing off.